Hey guys, welcome into another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms, and you can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. And I am back with another episode in my Fantasy Impact series that I've been doing here, breaking down all of the fantasy impacts following the NFL draft and most of the offseason news so far. And it's a great day. Hopefully everybody's been having a good week, having a good off season, getting those trades in your leagues. Man, that's the best part of Dynasty for me is the trading. I love trading in the off season. It's so much fun. I get to just improve every single roster until I have the perfect one, and then I end up competing pretty well, but never winning the title. No, I've been pretty lucky the last couple of years, so I can't complain too much there. But thank you guys so much for joining me, and I'm excited to get into today's episode. So as you can see, we're doing the NFC South, and so far we've worked through the AFC and NFC North and East. I've done the AFC South so far, and today it's time for the NFC South, finishing it out today. So today we're going through on our lads yet again, using them for their current depth charts for all the teams, and I'm going to start with the Atlanta Falcons. And just a quick update on news that we've had so far this week is training camps, OTAs have started this week, and it's been a lot of hype videos, a lot of news out there. But the one thing that's pretty interesting has been Trey Lance. He, for those that care, he's been the starter so far through OTAs. I know Jimmy Garoppolo's still hurt, but Trey Lance was 15 of 17 in the open portion of OTAs yesterday. So, everyone kept saying, oh, he can't be accurate. It's like, oh man, why would they give up 3 first-round picks for him if he's not the future of the team? I just do not understand Niners fans that want to cling to Jimmy Garoppolo so badly. So next week's going to be fun when I get those episodes in for the NFC West. So we will see there, but that's not what we're talking about today. Today we are talking about the NFC South and the Atlanta Falcons. So they have they don't have any new coaching staff. Their coaching staff is pretty much the same as last year. They have a new quarterback. The biggest offseason move that they did this year was they traded Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts for a 3rd-round pick. The NFL draft for the Falcons was actually really good in my opinion. And if you look at everything that they were able to do, they had 2 seconds, 2 thirds, a 1st-round pick, top 8 there, and quite a few later picks as well. And honestly, I think they nailed this draft. They really did. This free agency, this draft, they have had a very good offseason in my opinion. So like I said, the first things first is the Matt Ryan trade. So they traded him over to the Indianapolis Colts, which means that left them void of a quarterback. So they signed Marcus Mariota off the free agency wire this season, and a lot of people aren't very excited about this because Mariota was a former 1st-round pick. I think he was number 1. Was it him or Jameis that year? They were 1 and 2. I can't remember which one went first. I think Jameis might have went first, but Marcus Mariota was a top pick in the draft that he had. Didn't really work out too well with Tennessee. He was a backup for the Raiders for the last couple years. Was pretty impressive when he did start in those games, and I think that there's a lot of potential here. One of the most underrated pieces of the Marcus Mariota signing was he has a lot of experience with head coach Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith was the quarterback's coach who went on to be a tight ends coach for the Falcons when Mariota was on the team. So there is some history there between the two, and I think that he's going to be able to game plan around Marcus Mariota better than he would be able to game plan around someone like Matt Ryan. We know Matt Ryan's biggest flaw, other than not being clutch at all with the hilarious nickname of Matty Ice, is that he has no mobility whatsoever. He's a statue. He might be a worse statue than Tom Brady at this point in their careers, which is crazy. So Marcus Mariota definitely doesn't have that. He's a very, very good athlete, very talented and just full athletic profile, but not the best quarterback, right? So I think that they're going to utilize that and utilize Marcus Mariota's running a little bit more for this offense this year. Now, the biggest mystery is the third round pick that you can see right here. They signed Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder was rumored to be first round pick. This year's draft class for quarterbacks was a nightmare. Everyone fell, yada, yada, yada. You've heard it 1,000 times. But Desmond Ridder going to the Falcons is the best case scenario for Ridder. I think that he has long-term prospects with this team. He's going to be a starter eventually with the Falcons. It's just a matter of when, right? Is it going to be this year or is it going to be next year? They signed Marcus Mariota to a 2-year contract, and this is year one of the 2 years, so it's like no guaranteed money either, so they can move on for him for nothing. So if it doesn't work out for Marcus Mariota here, Desmond Ridder will see playing time. And when you look at Desmond Ridder's just stylistic comp, he's an athlete. He's a very, very good athlete, not the best quarterback. He's very similar to Marcus Mariota. They don't have the same tendencies, things like that. I wouldn't call them a comp for each other, but they're a similar skill set, similar play style. So Desmond Ridder is going to be able to learn from Marcus Mariota a little bit. And whatever you think about Marcus Mariota, he is a vet in the NFL. He's been around. He understands things to a higher level than a rookie just coming in does. So he'll be able to help Desmond Ridder quite a bit in his transition to the NFL. And I'm not sure if you guys can hear that, but it is storming like crazy here. The thunder and lightning is just going nuts today, so hopefully I don't lose power and lose this recording, but we will see, and we'll hopefully hang in there. But Desmond Ridder, Marcus Mariota, very good duo in my opinion. And that's where I think there's a lot of value in Desmond Ridder right now. I wasn't the biggest Ridder fan before the draft. I'm still not the biggest fan of him for real football, but for fantasy football, his rushing upside is no joke. Just like Marcus Mariota, it's no joke. So the fact that Ridder is going the mid-second round, I get it. He was a third-round pick, blah, 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 draft capital, blah, 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 blah. 15 receivers don't need to go before Desmond Ridder as the number 2 or number 3 quarterback in a super flex league. It's just nuts. It's nuts. The upside is there for Ridder that if he does end up getting the starter job, which most people think he is going to because Marcus Mariota isn't that exciting, right? If he ends up getting the starter's job, he's worth a first at least. So you're automatically just returning on your value right there. And I think that he's going to help you be able to win games. They're going to give him a little bit of time to see if he can be the guy. I've been talking about this on Twitter the last couple of days. Everyone is down on these third-round picks. Oh, third-round picks, they just never do it. But they do. The draft process, and I want to hit on this real quick. This will be a quick tangent, hopefully, on analytics, and one of my biggest issues with analytics, because this is what I don't like about analytics. It looks at everything at such a small sample size. Oh, well, if you look at the last 30 years of drafts, it doesn't. 30 years ago, the NFL was completely different. 20 years ago, the NFL was a completely different sport. 10 years, a decade ago, the running backs were much more important. It was just starting to transition to the more pass-heavy NFL at that point. So I don't understand why we're looking at the draft and what people prioritize in the offseason and the contracts and all this stuff from 10 years ago. It's just it's too small of a sample size. You got less than 10 years of viable data on whether or not these guys are going to be able to make it and utilize. Because it's the same thing with the running backs, right? Oh, running backs shouldn't be first-round picks. Okay, so they're going to start falling to the second, third, fourth. Oh, but it's a fourth-round running back. They're never going to make it. Which one do you guys want? What do you want? You know, this is my problem with analytics. Oh, well, the hit rate. The hit rate is based off of changing data. The data is not settled. It's not the same strategy every single year. So that's my problem with this whole thing. Desmond Ridder, odds are he's never going to be anything for the NFL. But we don't know that because the NFL is constantly shifting their strategies. That's the whole point. So that's why I'm willing to take a high second round stab at Desmond Ridder, because he's going to return the value if he gets a starter's job. So that's my opinion on the quarterback situation here. Do with it what you will. But yeah, I think that analytics is going too far with the whole Desmond Ridder being a 3rd-round pick take, in my opinion. All right, running back wise, you got Cordero Patterson playing running back receiver yet again. They signed Damian Williams. People are really excited about this signing. I'm not personally. I don't think Damian Williams has much left in the tank, and he's an older guy. He's been around like a ton of teams in the NFL, and all of a sudden, oh, he's the best guy. The best guy on this team is the rookie 5th-round pick, Tyler Algier. Again, running backs don't value him as much, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the Falcons got a good, solid guy in the 5th round. Well, you can't draft him. He's going to bust. He's going to bust. What do you guys want? I don't understand. So Tyler Algier, good skill set. He was on my list pre-draft. I think he was like number 9 on my list. Big body guy, can handle a good workload. Decent hands, not the best. A little bit of he's a little iffy in pass pro, but that's what Damian Williams is for. Tyler Algier is going to have to learn a little bit. He's going to bring up to speed. But he's like a 3rd-round pick right now in rookie drafts, late 2nd in rookie drafts. He has all the upside to be a starter for a team in the NFL. And again, teams are prioritizing the running back position a lot less, especially Atlanta. People have been talking about Atlanta for a good running back landing spot for like 3 years now, and they just continue to just punt on the position. So we gotta make up our minds here. Either they're gonna invest in a running back, which they haven't really seemed to do, or Tyler Algier is gonna have an opportunity here to prove what he's got, and he has pretty decent talent. He's not the best, but he has an opportunity here, and I want to see what he can do. So if you're looking at a running back for the Atlanta Falcons, the only one that I'm taking any stabs at is Tyler Algier. Patterson, again, he's a wide receiver. You can do with him whatever you want. Oh, he's hard to value. He's like basically a contender only if you're in win now mode. Take a stab at him, but yeah, he's 33 years old. We'll see. You can. I abstain from Cordero Patterson. That's how I feel about him. All right, tight end wise, we got Kyle Pitts, the one of the top tight ends in the dynasty rankings right now. Most people's number 1 or number 2. Some people, I guess, can have him number 3 with Kelsey and Mark Andrews ahead of him. But yeah, he's my number 1. He's just a freak of nature. And real quick, I want to touch on the wide receivers for this team because I love what Atlanta's doing with this offense. I'm like low-key an Atlanta fan right now just because I love what they're being able to do here. So they got Drake London with their 1st overall pick, number 8 overall. They have Auden Tate. They've got Cordero Patterson, again, wide receiver RB combo, and Bryan Edwards. What do all of those guys have in common? And Kyle Pitts. What do all those guys have in common? They're physical freaks. They're monsters on the turf. I love it. They're playing like the big body bully style of football. I want to see what they can do with a bunch of just nasty men on the field that can just bully people around. They're matchup nightmares is what they are for every defense. Kyle Pitts he's a tight end. He's 6'6", 260 pounds, and runs a 4.4. What the hell do you do against that on defense? It is nuts. Last year, they were able to shut him down because they had nobody in the wide receiver core. Now they've got Drake London, who is 6'6", 220 pounds, and just, I don't know what his 40 is because he didn't run one, but he's probably like a 4.55, mid 4.5s guy. He's pretty quick. Not the fastest, but pretty quick. You got Auden Tate, who's 6'3", as a slot wide receiver, and then you got Bryan Edwards, who's 6'3", as another outside guy. And everyone's written off Bryan Edwards as well, but I think that there's a decent opportunity here for Bryan Edwards. We saw it last year for Bryan Edwards, and this is year 3 for Bryan Edwards, where again it used to take wide receivers a little bit of time, but Bryan Edwards, he would not have been able to be the overtime god that he was last year. Every time there was overtime, Bryan Edwards just suddenly appeared in the game, and they were able to target him when they didn't target him the entire rest of the game. They saved him for overtime, basically every game. So why are we punishing Bryan Edwards for not getting targets? Like, I understand the targets are earned argument that people use all the time, but he was open quite a bit. he wasn't just open in overtime. He was open during the game, and Derek Carr wasn't able to make use of that. And that's my biggest problem with Derek Carr for actual NFL when we get to the AFC West here next week. But Derek Carr is a great fan. He's a decent quarterback. He does dumb stuff, man. Like he's Matt Ryan for the AFC. Well, I guess Matt Ryan's in the AFC now, but he was Matt Ryan for the AFC before. So again, why are we punishing Bryan Edwards for that? So Kyle Pitts, number one tight end for me. He's just a physical freak, and he's only going to get better. Yeah, I love that for fantasy. He's going to have so many targets, especially with a head coach who used to be a tight ends coach. So, yeah, they're going to feed the ever-loving hell out of Kyle Pitts in years to come. Wide receivers. Drake London is my number one wide receiver in this draft class. After the draft, I loved his talent pre-draft. I think he was number 3 for me before, but the landing spot is ideal. Not a ton of competition. Kyle Pitts was really the only competition when they drafted him. Now Bryan Edwards is a little bit more, Cordero Patterson, but Drake London is going to be able to hit the ground running right away. And when they get a quarterback probably next year or the year after, or it could be Desmond Ridder. Again, I talked about him earlier. If it's Desmond Ridder, you got big guys across the middle of the field. They'll be able to utilize that quite well. Auden Tate, I'm not really excited about him for fantasy. I think that he'll be solid. But honestly, I think Bryan Edwards might be the sneakiest buy out of all these guys. Drake London and Bryan Edwards, I would love to get them. Bryan Edwards you can have for almost nothing. People are throwing him in on trades just to get rid of him, trying to sell him on the hype. Well, consider me a buyer because I will take his hype. Drake London, again, I think that he's the number one wide receiver in this draft class. Some people have Burks, some people have Wilson, whatever you feel about him. But for me personally, Drake London is number one as of right now. So it'll cost you about the 102, 103 in a super flex. So yeah, invest that if you will, but I think that he'll ultimately pay off for that price. So Atlanta Falcons, I love what they've been able to do this offseason for their offense. Offensive line isn't the best, but it's not terrible. They added a little bit of depth there, and they added quite a bit of guys to the defensive side of the ball. They're really trying to get better on the defensive side, so that should definitely help as well. So Atlanta Falcons, I think they're sneaky kind of good. It all depends on Marcus Mariota, if he can be solid or not. So I think that they're going to be kind of middle of the pack in the NFC. I don't think that they're going to be a playoff contender at all, but everyone has them as like, oh, they're going to have less than 5 wins or 6 wins. I think they're going to surprise people. I think they're going to finish like 8-9, 7-10, right in that range. So we will see, but yeah, I think this offense could be pretty fun. If they were able to contend last year with Matt Ryan and no weapons, Mariota's not that big of a downgrade over Matt Ryan at this point in both of their careers because Matt Ryan is just not that good anymore. And you've got a much better receiving core than you did last year, whatever you think about it. So if they can somehow next year convince Calvin Ridley to stay with this team, Drake London, Calvin Ridley, and Bryan Edwards with Kyle Pitts, oh my goodness, that could be nasty. So Atlanta Falcons, very interesting. All right, now next team here is the Carolina Panthers. And again, interesting situation. So they have new offensive coordinator this year, Ben McAdoo, formerly head coach of the New York Giants. And I think he was a quarterback coach for Green Bay before that. He went to be the OC for the Giants, and then they fired Tom Caldwell that year. He ended up getting the head coaching job for about 4 or 5 games, and then if everybody remembers him coming back the next year with the greased back hair and just, yeah, it was a nightmare. He broke Eli Manning's career start record for Geno Smith. It was just not a pretty situation for Ben McAdoo. Matt Rule decided to bring him in to be his offensive coordinator. I think it's kind of a decent ad personally, but I'm not that enthused by what his potential is. There's a reason he's been out of the NFL for a while, and I think that we're going to see it this year. But maybe he can show us what he can do and why he was able to get the offensive coordinator for the Giants years back. So interesting little coaching change right there. Now, offensively, this is where things get interesting. Going into the NFL draft, all anyone talked about was what are the Panthers going to do at 6 overall? They got to take Kenny Pickett. They've got to take him. It's quarterback. That's the pick. It's going to be a quarterback. Draft day comes. They are hinting at it. We could take a quarterback. Board falls to them. Akeem Ekwonu, first overall pick for them, left tackle. Amazing pick. They were able to do it. Their offensive line is a nightmare. They brought in Austin Corbett for the right guard. Taylor Moton he's a pretty good right tackle. Nothing amazing, but Brady Christensen, 3rd round pick last year. He was playing left tackle for them, I believe, last year. He's going to bump into left guard where he should be a little bit better for the team. And Bradley Bozeman comes over from Baltimore as a free agent. So it's a much better offensive line than what they had. Last year was horrendous. It was one of the worst offensive lines in the league. It was like bottom 4, I think, bottom 3 maybe even. It was just a nightmare. They get a lot of people's number 1 tackle in the draft, and he will make an instant impact for this team. I know that tackles sometimes come on a little bit slow for rookies, but even still, they were just so bad on the left side of their offensive line that Akeem Ekwonu is going to make a massive difference. So whoever the quarterback is, and that's a little hint there, I think that they are going to be much better off with this offensive line than they would have been last year, because it was just a nightmare last year. So really like that they were able to stick to their guns and get a left tackle. I know that Matt Rule is on the hot seat, and again, I'm not a big fan of this personally. I understand that Matt Rule hasn't been able to get this rebuild going, but it's only year 4 for Matt Rule this year. Every single year they've gotten better under Matt Rule. And say what you will about him, it's not been the best situation, but he has not had a quarterback this entire time. He has not been able to get consistent quarterback play. And I know he's made some weird moves. He traded for Sam Darnold last year, and it didn't work out. He signed Stephon Gilmore, or traded for him from the Patriots, and it wasn't that great. But if you remember last year, their defense was insane. If they had a quarterback that was worth anything, they would have been hands down a playoff contender. Just that's how it was. But Sam Darnold is not the guy. We've known that for a few years. Everyone was kind of hoping that maybe this trade to Carolina would be able to spark his career, and it just did not happen. And I don't think it's ever going to happen. If they weren't able to do it last year, it's done. Christian McCaffrey got injured. That hurt things as well. So there was a few things with the offense last year and the whole team that were good. There was improvement from the defense. Their offensive weapons were capable, even if it was just not great. That tells me all you got to do is get a quarterback, and this team is going to be a massive powerhouse. Their defense is one of the youngest in the NFL, by the way. It's crazy how young their defense is, and it's very, very good. So I think that they should give Matt Rule another couple of years, let him try and get a quarterback, get the man a quarterback, and then just see what he can do. But all the rumors are that he's on the hot seat. The David Tepper, the owner, just does not want to put up with mediocrity, and I get it. But at the same time, look at all these teams. They just stick with a guy, right? You got to give him some time to figure out how the NFL works. And Matt Rule was a college coach. He wasn't an NFL coach. This is his first time in the NFL. You got to give him a little bit of room to fail, you know what I mean? Just take a little bit of the pressure off. So the fact that they were able to stick to Akeem Ekwonu despite being on the hot seat, because if they lose this year, he's probably fired. So the fact that they kept to their guns, got the left tackle, it is impressive, and I want to commend them for that. So going through the rest of the draft, in the 3rd round, they actually added another quarterback. One of my favorite quarterbacks in this draft class, Matt Corral. And I talked about Sam Darnold. At this point in time, we know that he's not the guy. Matt Corral going in the 3rd round, again, I get it. People were down on this quarterback class. there's no world where Matt Corral should have been a third-round pick. He should have at least been a second-round pick, despite what you feel about this quarterback class. And I feel like he still could have been a first. I think Matt Corral is better than Kenny Pickett. Don't get me wrong. Like, Kenny Pickett is not that good. Matt Corral showed quite a bit. He's only fallen because he got injured, and people are like, oh, his offense is a little more simple. Who cares, man? Who cares? He showed he was the best of the quarterbacks last year, by far, hands down. So Matt Corral is going to be the starter for this team at some point in this season. He is going to take that from Sam Darnold. I don't know how many games it's going to be, whether it's going to be 17 or 7. I don't know. But Matt Corral is taking that job, and I think that he's going to keep that job. And if Matt Corral can show that he is the guy, he might single-handedly save Matt Rule's job for this team. So I am all in on Matt Corral. And the fact that he's going 210 or later in Superflex leagues, oh my goodness, give it to me all day. I am targeting him in every single Superflex rookie draft because he is free. He is free money, and he was my number 2 pre-draft for fantasy, and he's number 2 post-draft. So he has not moved at all for me, and I don't care that he's a third-round pick. He is way better than Sam Darnold, and that's the craziest thing about all these third-round picks real quick. Matt Corral, Malik Willis, and Desmond Ridder, they all went to opportunities where they could get the starter's job if they played well enough. And I think Matt Corral is going to play well enough. So I love that. Go get Matt Corral in your leagues, and yeah, you will not be sorry. Now, tight end for fantasy, not really that enthused. Ian Thomas, they signed to an extension this offseason. They got Tommy Tremble, third-round pick last year. He's going to be someone that's a little bit of a watch list candidate for me. I'm not doing anything with Tommy Tremble this year, but I am watching him for next year because this is year 2 for him. Year 3 is when I think that he'll be able to take a step forward. And everyone was really hyped about Tommy coming into the draft last year, and he's a very good pass catcher, but I just don't expect a ton from him this year. I think it could be more like Mark Andrews' situation, where at the end of this year I think he's going to take a step forward, and next year is going to be the year that you want to really go after him in your draft. So, yeah, I am excited about him next year, but not that excited about him this year. So, yeah, that's my thought on the tight ends. I don't want anything to do with Ian Thomas. He's basically a blocker for the team. Wide receivers, DJ Moore is the only wide receiver that's interesting at all for this team. Terrace Marshall is still kind of interesting. I know that everyone's kind of down on him because, he didn't do much as a rookie, but I mean, come on, guys, we got to stop. I mean, look at Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase breaks what we think of for rookies. Rookies aren't supposed to do what Jamar Chase did, what Justin Jefferson did. That's why those guys are top 3 overall dynasty wide receivers right now. But Terrace Marshall didn't do that, so now we're just going to bury him into oblivion. So I think that he's worth kind of a shot and a stash, but I do have my reservations. I think that Terrace Marshall could probably be better than Robbie Anderson, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not spending a ton on him. I'm not saying that, but I think that we should at least give him a chance. So my thoughts on Terrace Marshall are, if you can get him for a third-round pick, I'd probably take him over a stab on one of the rookies this year, but that's just me. DJ Moore is very interesting. If they go with Matt Corral, I think DJ Moore is going to explode this year. I think that you're going to be able to get him. I think he's going to finish as a top 12 wide receiver with Matt Corral. That's just my personal opinion. Oh, and sorry, I did skip over the running backs just because it's Christian McCaffrey, and Christian McCaffrey is the only one you want to own here, and he's top 3, and just, there's nothing to really talk about with Christian McCaffrey. If Christian McCaffrey gets injured, Deonta Foreman, Chuba Hubbard, it's going to be a workhorse role for both of those guys, and yeah, do with that what you will. You really don't want them for fantasy, so yeah, that's my thoughts on those 2 guys. But yeah, DJ Moore, if Matt Corral gets the job, I am all in on him. I think you're going to be able to buy him really cheap right now for what the potential upside of him is. So, yeah, the Carolina Panthers, man, I know that they have a bad stigma around them right now in the NFL, but I think that they're very close to being extremely competitive. So that is my thoughts on the Panthers, and that leads us to the New Orleans Saints. So the Saints, they have had a very interesting offseason. So I'm pretty much a known Saints hater. If you follow me on Twitter, I just rag on the Saints basically every offseason because I do not like their draft strategy or their roster construction strategy that they have. Basically, they're $1 million or $100 million over cap every offseason, and they have to extend guys and re-sign guys and restructure guys and cut guys to get that number under, and then they can do what they want after they're under the cap number for the year. They've let a lot of really good players go because they can't afford to have them. But, they've been able to do it and stay competitive. So there's a lot of egg on my face. They every year they're able to get under that cap number. So there's props to them there. Honestly, what I just wish they would do one time is just eat the cap number. Like, get down to zero, stop extending all these guys, just eat the cap and just let it ride for 1 year. And then all of a sudden you have like $100 million next year. Like, I want them to stop kicking the can down the road. Just pay your credit card off and just, use all that money to make yourselves a powerhouse again. Like, I don't know why it's that hard, but that said, again, they are very good at what they do, even if I don't like it personally. Still have an amazing defense. Even letting guys go, they've been very, very competitive. Brought in Tyrann Mathieu this year. Pretty good offseason for them, all in all. But the biggest thing that I think is going to have an impact on this team is Sean Payton is now a TV anchor. I think that's where he went for the year. But Sean Payton is no longer the head coach or offensive coordinator. They've got Pete Carmichael as the offensive coordinator. Dennis Allen was the defensive coordinator last year. They signed him to the head coaching job. He's got a couple guys underneath him here, but I believe the rumors are that Dennis Allen is going to continue to call plays for the defense and basically run the entire defensive side of the ball. Pete Carmichael has been with the Saints for a long time under Sean Payton, and so it's a little bit of a positional advantage for him, but I think that the biggest disadvantage is losing Sean Payton's brain because he's one of the most creative offensive minds in the NFL, and they don't have that for the offense anymore. So we'll see what Carmichael can do, but I think that losing Sean Payton is going to be a little bit bigger of an impact than people are putting on it right now, but it'll take into the season to see what the results are from losing him, whether or not that does have a massive impact or not. So that said, the interesting draft picks for them. Trevor Penning was the first-round pick to replace the left tackle who went over to the Miami Dolphins. Oh, his name is escaping me off the top of my head, but he was one of the best left tackles in the NFL. Replace him with the first-round pick, Trevor Penning. Had another first-round pick, Chris Olave. They traded up for Chris Olave. I think he was the number 3 wide receiver off the board. Traded up right after the Lions to get Chris Olave, and the Lions took Jameson Williams. I think they were afraid of someone else snagging Olave out from under them. So signed Jarvis Landry just a couple weeks ago, and they have Michael Thomas supposedly coming back, hopefully this year. Jameis Winston coming back. So this offense is very interesting. They have 4/5 of the offensive line that's been the same for the last few years. They get Trevor Penning, who's a rookie. It's going to be a tough learning curve for him coming in from the NFL or coming in as a rookie, but he wasn't one of my best tackles in this class, but we will see. He plays mean, so maybe he can get it going quickly, but I think that he's going to be exposed a little bit, and we'll just have to hope that he can not be a just complete nightmare for this team, because Jameis Winston at quarterback is going to be fun to watch. So we'll see what they do there. But yeah, Jameis Winston, I love him for fantasy. I think that he's definitely, if they open Jameis up, man, it's going to be so much fun. The 30 for 30 on Jameis Winston, 30 touchdowns for 30 picks. I think that he'll have a ton of yards with this receiving core and this offense revamped offensive line. I just really like this team and Jameis Winston at the head of it. So we'll see what he can do. I like him as a top 12 guy if he can stay healthy all year. And rumors are that he's going to be there for all of training camp. So he's still rehabbing a little bit from the torn ACL, but he should be just fine by then. He's even had some of his ridiculous workout videos so far this offseason. So it looks like he's just fine. Now, running back wise, you got Mark Ingram, who's like 1,000 years old now, Tony Jones Jr., and Dwayne Washington. All these guys are backing up Alvin Kamara. The biggest question mark here is, one, what do we do with Alvin Kamara in Dynasty? And two, is there going to be any suspension on Alvin Kamara for the fight that he got arrested for a couple months ago? Now, if you didn't pay attention to it, Alvin Kamara was arrested in Vegas, I believe it was, for beating the crap out of a guy in an elevator. Him and like his crew hit the guy like 45 times or something after he was already incapacitated, and it was just a whole thing. There's supposedly going to be charges on him. There's a court date, yada, yada. He'll probably end up settling, pay the guy some money, and the charges will get dropped. But then the NFL, they have the opportunity to add an additional suspension on top of it from the NFL side. So who knows how many games Kamara is going to lose, if any. But that's the biggest question. So let's say that Alvin Kamara loses 4 to 6 games. Let's just say that's what it's going to be. I think that Alvin Kamara is going to be a steal for Dynasty, because I think that when he's healthy, he's still going to be able to just ball out. That's always been Alvin Kamara's game. He doesn't need a ton of volume. He just needs a very high efficiency, which he has been able to provide for many, many years now. But Kamara is getting older. I think that people are overreacting a little bit to the age of Kamara. Basically, they're looking at this team. They don't have Sean Payton. They don't have Drew Brees. Jameis Winston's the head of the team now, and Kamara's getting older. He's 25, I think, right now. He's going into the 26 age drop-off cliff for running backs. So people are overreacting and trying to sell him for a lot cheaper than what I think his fantasy value is. So there can definitely be some value if you were to go try and get Alvin Kamara right now for what he's going to be able to do for your team, in my opinion. So Alvin Kamara, suspension or not, don't really care for Dynasty. That honestly, all that means is he's just going to be a little bit healthier going into the Dynasty playoffs than normal. He's going to have an extra 4 weeks of rest. So, yeah, I think that Alvin Kamara is a sneaky buy, and people are still selling him as an RB1, but not as like a top 5 guy anymore. And I think that you could have top 5 value from him for maybe another year or two, and top 12 value definitely for the next couple of years. So yeah, I think that the overcorrection to Alvin Kamara has been too extreme, and that creates a very nice buy window where you're buying him a little bit cheaper, again, like I said, than what he's worth. And you still have to pay a lot, but I think it'll be worth it ultimately in the end. Now, tight end wise, you got Taysom Hill back at tight end, Adam Troutman. Don't really care about the tight ends for fantasy. You can't make me. So Troutman's kind of interesting. He's 3rd round pick. This is year 3 for him. This is the breakout year, but he missed a year to injury. So I don't know. You got to show it to me. Tight end, it's just such a drop off from those top guys that Troutman just does not interest me whatsoever. He is, I wouldn't even put him in like the Irv Smith tier personally. So, he's probably in like the 15 to 20 range right now for tight ends, and it's just, I'm not paying anything for those guys. I am not. If you don't have top 10 upside, in my opinion, then I don't want you on my team. So that's just my opinion on Adam Troutman. I know other people are a lot higher on him than me, but yeah, you can pay what you want for him, but I'm out, especially with this wide receiver core that I'm about to talk about right now. So wide receivers, I talked about already. They get Chris Olave in the 1st round this year, and they get Jarvis Landry just a couple weeks ago from a free agency, and they might get Michael Thomas back. Last year, their receiving core was one of the worst in the NFL that I've ever seen, like legitimately the worst. Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, and Deontay Hardy. Literally all of those guys are player number 2 at their position behind guys that didn't even play last year. So that just tells you how bad they were. Nobody cared about these guys whatsoever. Jarvis Landry in the slot will be just fine with Jameis Winston. I actually think that he has sneaky high value in the slot, but Michael Thomas plays a lot in the slot as well. He kind of moves around a little bit more. Chris Olave being a rookie, I think he's kind of the odd man out, but it all depends on how Michael Thomas comes back. If he's healthy or not this year, it could be a massive steal for fantasy football, but we will see. So Jameis, the one good thing about Jameis is I think that he is going to pass enough that all three of these guys could be fantasy relevant. Maybe not all fantasy elite, but they could be relevant and give. Sorry about that. I actually accidentally unplugged my microphone, so that was fun. But yeah, like I was saying, I think that Jameis Winston is good enough that he could sustain all three of these guys for fantasy. I think that they might not be elite wide receivers, but he could make them have good weeks from here and there. So, sorry, I got a little bit jumbled from unplugging my mic there. But yeah, I am interested for this receiving core long term. Chris Olave is really sneaky. If Michael Thomas doesn't come back healthy, Olave is going to have a ton of opportunity just right off the bat. So we'll see what they can do. But for fantasy, this is a much, much better receiving core than what they've put out there the last couple of years. So all in all, I think that just really speaks well about Jameis Winston and his opportunity for fantasy football this year. So Saints, definitely interesting. Even if I've been a known Saints hater the last couple of years, I got to admit their team looks pretty good right now, and they're definitely going to be contenders as long as Winston can stay healthy. So we will see what they can do this season. I have them as a playoff contender, but not winning the division. Ultimately, the division winners are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are our last team in the breakdown for the NFC South here. So, again, you got Tom Brady, retired, unretired, comes back to be the quarterback one more, maybe 2 more years. Who knows at this point? Brady always did say he wanted to play until he's 45, which is this season. So this might be it. This might be the last run. And last year he was still really freaking good. He is such a freak in nature, man. Oh my goodness. Playing this good at 45 is just nuts. So Tom Brady comes back, so it means that they are able to re-sign basically the entire team. They signed Chris Godwin to a long-term contract, Leonard Fournette to a 3-year contract. They bring back some of the defensive guys. The only person they haven't brought back so far is Rob Gronkowski, who is considering retirement yet again. So we'll see what they can do there, but the biggest thing though is they no longer have Bruce Arians as a head coach. Todd Bowles takes over. He was defensive coordinator last year. They replaced Todd Bowles with a couple, a woman and another man. But I think Todd Bowles is still basically going to run the defense. Brian Leftwich is still the offensive coordinator. And supposedly there's a lot of rumors out there about Tom Brady did not like Bruce Arians. Him and Brian Leftwich were basically creating the offensive game plans every single week, and then Bruce Arians screwed it all up on like Saturday of the week, and yeah, it was a whole thing. But that said, I think that it'll be very interesting to see what this offense looks like. I think it's going to be pretty much the same as last year, but if there's any tweaks that these guys make that Arians was kind of cutting out of the roster last year, maybe we're going to see a little bit more creativity this year, which will be interesting. So excited to see the Bucs. They're definitely the favorites for this division by far. So offensive line still very good. They did lose their left guard, forget his name, but he retired and decided not to unretire with Tom Brady. I think one of their other players, I forget who it was, he actually retired. Oh, the center, Ryan Jensen. He unretired with Tom Brady. Left guard also retired, but didn't come back. So, yeah, most 4/5 of the offensive line are the exact same. Not going to be a big difference there. They should still be just fine. but Tom Brady at quarterback gonna be just fine. Tom Brady is a good fantasy contributor this year. I don't really know how to value someone like Tom Brady for dynasty in like a super flex league because he's 45 years old. You're basically buying him for 1 year. So what is that worth? What is 1 year of Tom Brady worth to you? A second round pick? Is he worth a first? I mean, if it gets you a title, maybe you give up a first for Tom Brady, but man, it's really risky because if you don't win the title, you are going all in. You know what I mean? You're pushing all your chips in the middle of the pot here. So yeah, Tom Brady, I think he's going to be very, very good for fantasy this year. I just don't know what you want to give up for him in fantasy. Running back wise, you got Leonard Fournette coming back. Big Lenny, Uncle Lenny, Playoff Lenny, Lombardi Lenny, whatever you want to call him, Lenny Fournette. Really like him for fantasy. The biggest thing for Leonard Fournette the last few years is he has been in Tom Brady's trust tree, and because of that, he has basically become the James White for this team with all of the carries as well. So when he's out there, he gets all the carries, and then he also gets a ton of targets through the air, which was never really one of Fournette's calling cards early in his career. But then he had that year with Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville where he got like 90 targets or something like that year. Really did well. He's not a great pass catching back because he's not efficient with the catches, but he catches basically everything you throw at him. It's just not the most exciting runs after that. So Leonard Fournette is a great running back for fantasy. Again, I don't really know what you give up for Fournette. I think he's 26 right now, so he's at that running back cliff where he's going to fall off the cliff here soon. He does have a lot of carries under his belt, and he looks a little bit slower than he did when he was younger with Jacksonville. But yeah, I think that Fournette is definitely top 12 upside as long as he can stay healthy. In points per game, he's definitely going to be top 12. I just don't know if season long he's going to be able to play enough games or if he's going to get banged up or not. They've got Giovanni Bernard yet again. They did let Ronald Jones walk. He went over to the Kansas City Chiefs. They drafted Rachaad White in the 3rd round. Really like this. I was really high on Rachaad White pre-draft. This is a great landing spot for Dynasty. Fournette, again, he signed a 3-year contract, but I think most of the money was guaranteed up front. I think that it was basically just to get him back with Tom Brady. After Brady's gone, they're going to blow the whole team up for the most part, except for a few key positions. So Rachaad White, I think for fantasy, for Dynasty, is going to be very, very good. And he's going in the 2nd round of rookie drafts right now. And he has the potential to be, if Leonard Fournette misses time, it's not Giovanni Bernard that's going to get a ton of carries and work in the game. It'll be Rachaad White who comes in because he's a big dude with very soft hands. So yeah, I really like Rachaad White as a replacement to Fournette if anything were to happen as a handcuff for him, but I think that he'll be able to work his way onto the field in the passing game early in his career and kind of show what he can do in that side of things as well. So for an early second, yeah, I'm all over that as well. Tight end wise, again, Gronk hasn't come back to the team, so Cameron Brate is the starter for right now. They're not going to go get another guy. There's no O.J. Howard anymore. They got Cade Otton in the 4th round of the draft, but really, Cameron Brate is very interesting just for Dynasty this year or for fantasy football because I think that he might be able to get double-digit touchdowns because Tom Brady's gone to him a lot in the past in the red zone. Cameron Brate has been able to produce in the red zone quite a few times. So I think that he's going to be kind of sneaky touchdown upside week to week. You can almost probably rely on him almost every single week, but other than that, I don't think he's going to do much else in the passing game. I think that there's enough other options that they're going to go to other than Brate. So, yeah, that's what you think of Brate. He is getting much older as well. So I'm not really investing much, but if you can snag him off your waiver wires in your league because he's not very highly rostered, I think that he's someone that you could plug in week to week and not be killed at the tight end position. He's not going to win you the week, but I think that he won't kill you at all. I think that he'll have a lot of upside this season if Gronk doesn't come back. Now, wide receivers, they've got Mike Evans still, amazing wide receiver. Chris Godwin just signed him to an extension. He is coming off the ACL tear. And then they brought in Russell Gage as a free agent this year from Atlanta. Still got Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, Brashad Perryman, Jalen Darden. A lot of depth there behind those three guys. But that three at the top is very, very interesting. So Mike Evans, with no Chris Godwin, much higher opportunity at the start of the year. And Chris Godwin, there's a lot of talk about him probably starting on the PUP. He tore his ACL very late in the season last year. A lot of these guys, I know that it's very common to come back quickly, but not everybody does. And there's talk about him starting on the PUP, which means he'll miss the first 6 games of the year. Now, for Dynasty, it doesn't really matter. 6 games, it's meaningless in the terms of the rest of his career. But if you're trying to contend, it is a little nerve-wracking for Chris Godwin. So whether or not he can come back in 6 games, whether he's 100%, like I said, not everybody comes back after 1 year from an ACL tear. So we'll see where he's at once the injury is recovered. But yeah, that's a little concerning about that piece if you're trying to win this year. So you might not see Chris Godwin back to full form at all this season, but that just means that Russell Gage is going to be very, very interesting for fantasy football. So Russell Gage, we saw what he could do over in Atlanta. He had moments where, especially with Julio Jones, when he was still on the team, that he was able to produce very, very heavily with Matt Ryan. Now he gets the best quarterback of all time, and there's no Chris Godwin. Mike Evans is going to be drawing a lot of coverage without Gronk. Again, why I think that Fournette and Cameron Brate are kind of interesting is because Mike Evans is the go-to guy for Brady right now in the wide receiver core. Russell Gage is going to be able to benefit from that a lot, in my opinion. So one thing with Tom Brady too is, despite being 45, he still has an amazing arm. Like, his arm it looks like he's still like 30. It's crazy how good his deep ball is still this late in his career. So Russell Gage, I think, is very, very interesting for fantasy, at least until Chris Godwin comes back and is fully recovered. So yeah, there's a lot of value on this team, and then their defense is still really good, so it should keep them with the ball more often than not. So there's a lot to love here about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The question is, after Brady's gone, how much do you value someone like Chris Godwin? How much do you value someone like Mike Evans, Russell Gage? I think that after Brady's gone, they're not gonna go with Kyle Trask. They're not gonna go with Blaine Gabbert as their primary quarterback. They're gonna try and go get somebody. So we'll see what that is, whether it means that they'll tank for a year and try and get somebody in 2024 or whatever it may be. But I'm very interested about the long-term dynasty aspect of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because I'm still investing in these guys despite the fact that Brady might disappear after this year. But, after the season, you never know what could happen. Maybe they trade for someone like Marcus Mariota from the Falcons, or that's a bad example because it's in their division, but you know what I mean. Maybe they try and go get somebody who's competing and is a depth piece. Maybe Mitch Trubisky comes over. Maybe he shows pretty well for the Steelers. They just took Kenny Pickett in the first round, so they've got to go to Kenny Pickett at some point. But maybe Mitch shows enough that he'll come over and be the starting quarterback for the Buccaneers, and could be very good next year as a replacement for Tom Brady. So that's the biggest question: is what does this team look like when you're looking at these players for dynasty fantasy football after Tom Brady? Do you still love Mike Evans without Tom Brady? It depends who they get, but I still do personally. So that's my thoughts on the NFC South. Very interesting draft, interesting division. I think that the Bucs are going to win the division, but I think that there could be two other teams sneaking into the playoffs with the Panthers and the Saints this season. But You never know. So the NFC is kind of interesting. It's kind of top heavy with the Bucks and the Rams, but yeah, there's definitely opportunity for some of these teams to sneak in with these 7-team playoffs. So let me know what your thoughts are. If you're watching this over on YouTube, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the video if you're looking for more of this. And I know this has been a long episode. I have no idea how long I've been recording for. About the same, 54 minutes. Okay. But yeah, I'm hoping to, after I get through the next week's episodes, cutting these episodes down a lot. I don't want to be doing 2-hour-long shows every single week, but these breakdowns I feel are important enough to warrant that long of a breakdown. So I think that it's worth it. That's why I wanted to let you guys really hear my more detailed thoughts on all these teams. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to getting back down to 25-30 minute videos regularly after the Fantasy Impact series is over next week. So that said, hope everybody enjoys their Memorial Weekend this weekend. Spoiler alert, I'm going to record the AFC West podcast a little bit early because I'll be gone all weekend with the family on holiday, so I won't have a chance to record on Monday. We're actually coming back Monday, and I'm not going to be recording. I'm going to be exhausted Monday. Long drive, little kids. It's just going to be a long day. So I'm planning on recording the other episode before we leave on Friday. So I'll upload it on Monday, just like this, like all the other ones. But yeah, please be sure to come back and listen to that one. And we'll be finishing off with the AFC and NFC West next week. And then I've got some fun ideas that I want to break out and some guests that I want to try and get on the show next week. So thank you guys again so much for listening. Follow me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, on the Dynasty After Dark YouTube page if you're listening to this on the podcast, audio only. And yeah, we'll see you guys around. Have a good night.